Good evening. My name is Roxanne Truin, and I'm the coordinator of the MSU Science Festival. Welcome to tonight's talk with Dr. Yoshira Macias Mejia, and she's going to be talking about the settling down and settling in experience of Latino farm workers in Michigan. So welcome, Dr. Yoshira.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here, Roxanne. So this paper is called The Settling Down and Settling In Experiences of Latino Farm Workers in Michigan. This is co-written with Dr. Ruben Martinez. Here you see a picture of women working in the packaging sugar in Saginaw, Michigan. It's from 1958. So what is the purpose of this study, first of all? We're trying to contribute to the knowledge on Latinos settling experiences and incorporation in the Midwest, specifically Michigan. Some questions we are looking to answer through this study are, why did Latinos leave the migrant stream to settle in the Midwest? What were the experiences of these Latinos with regards to integrating in the Midwest, specifically in Michigan? So through this presentation, you'll get some idea as to why Latinos settled in Michigan. First of all, some background. We know that generations of Latinos have been migrant farm workers who have consistently come to Michigan to work in the fields. Many have come from Texas and would later decide to settle in and leave the migrant stream. Many stayed in Michigan as a result of economic opportunities, and some even found work outside of agriculture. Here's a picture of many of the seasonal farm workers working in the sugar beet industry, also from 1958. Another picture here is Farmworker Housing from 1954. As you can see, it's not as luxurious as you would imagine. This is where a lot of these farm workers were housed at the time. So the framework we use to interpret the settling out and settling in and settling down experiences of Latinos in Michigan is first is the phase of settling out, or estableciéndose afuera, which basically involves the psychological separation and the decision to leave the migrant lifestyle. Afterwards, you get into the second settling phase, which is settling down, or estableciéndose en la vecindad, which involves moving into a neighborhood, finding employment, and adjusting to a residential lifestyle. Finally, our third phase is settling in, estableciéndose en la comunidad, which involves establishing oneself or getting incorporated into the larger community by joining organizations. And the data and methods that we use for this study are based on an oral history project conducted by the Julian Samora Research Institute here at Michigan State University. This is an ongoing study of Latinos 50 years and older. Currently, we have 45 interviews that have been conducted as of 2020. The place of origin for many of these Latinos has been Texas. Some were born in Michigan, Mexico, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Guatemala. The gender breakdown of the participants are 29 males and 16 females. The education of these Latinos ranges from no formal education to postgraduate education, which some obtained after they were incorporated and left the migrant stream. Participants are all currently retired. The time of settlement of families ranges from the 1920s to the 1970s. This is overall a qualitative study. It was a bilingual survey, so in English and Spanish. And for this study, we just focus on the participants who are Latino farm workers and left the migrant stream. Based on the interviews, what we find with the first settlement phase is settling out. And as previously mentioned, most of these migrant families left the migrant stream in pursuit of economic opportunities. They wanted to give their children a better life, have a better life, be able to own a home, and etc. One of the participants specifically said, after we came here, we decided to stay. Well, he, in this case, her husband, got a good job because he got a factory job. Then we stayed here and sold everything back there, and that concludes that, and we stayed here. And this wasn't the only participant that told us that they left the migrant stream in pursuit of economic opportunities. They not only left the migrant stream, but some of them didn't even return to migrant farm working. Some of them got jobs at factories, in the auto industry at the time. And that was the main reason overall for leaving the migrant stream. Following that, the settling down experiences of these individuals were really shaped by financial hardships and finding shelter. So participant number 7 really recounts how her family lived in cars at the beginning of their time living here in Michigan. And this was in Perry, Michigan. It was not until one of their supervisors from the farm work decided to lend them some empty train wagons and told them, you know what, use these how you want, just use them to just make a home or a shelter. And that's how they lived for a time until her family, her parents specifically, were able to save up the money to buy a humble house in Lansing, Michigan, where they moved. And they would commute to Lansing on the weekends to stay in their home, where she talks about how she was able to shower and have a nice meal before they had to go back to the farm work during the week. Finally, the settling in experiences of a lot of these Latino farm workers had to do with integrating into life in Michigan. One of the consistent issues or challenges that these participants faced were the lack of English proficiency and the lack of a Latino community. The population at the time was a lot smaller than it is today. It is still not a large Latino population, but it's definitely growing. But at the time, it was a lot smaller. So one participant says, we're speaking Spanish. We are not speaking in Spanish. And I told her, but you are Mexican just like me. So to give you some context about this interview, this woman talks about how she's at the Cristo Rey Church, which is pictured here in the slide, and how one of the women there also spoke Spanish, but told her that she needed to speak in English. And well, her main language is Spanish. So she was like, well, why are you telling me this if you're also from the same background as myself? And she always talked about how that was a challenge, not only when it came to integrating into just the society, but in just work or anything else or interacting with people. Other participants also highlighted that English fluency was a barrier for them. Now, another thing to highlight with regards to the settling in experiences of these Latino farm workers is the fact that many of them were able to establish one of the first Spanish Catholic churches that was a Spanish-speaking church here in Lansing, and it's called the Cristo Rey Church. So this church was a place where a lot of these Latinos were able to not only practice their religion, but we're able to find a community. We're able to talk to others. We're able to gather for dinners, to help each other out, do you know how to do this? You know how to do that? and it was a good place for them to begin to integrate into life in Michigan. So more pictures about Latinos working in auto work here in Fisher Body in Lansing, Michigan from 1966. Another, finally, to wrap up the discussion, what we found in this study is that a lot of Latinos farm workers left the migrant stream as a result of seeking better economic opportunities. They encountered difficulties with regards to finding shelter, with financial difficulties. A lot of their challenges once they were trying to integrate into life in Michigan were a result of the lack of English fluency, the lack of a Latino community where they could talk to people from their own background that can help them integrate and find community. However, I will stress that even with all of these challenges, whether it was financial, the lack of community, language barriers, these Latino farm workers were able to persevere. Some, by learning English, they found housing, they found different employment opportunities. They established the Cristo Rey Church here in Lansing and have become some of the first Latinos here in the state of Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you for that talk. If you have questions, you can, if you're on the Zoom webinar, you can write them in the Q&A section and we'll answer those. And if you're on Facebook Live, if you have any questions, you can write them in the comment section and we have a few minutes to take your questions. I have a question for you. I'll start it off. So for the migrant families that came in to Michigan, did they have friends or family that had settled out before them? So that's how they knew there was a pathway, or could you expand on that?
So that's a great question. There were some individuals who did have friends or family who had left the migrant stream and were living in Michigan. And that's a way that they decided to settle down. But for some, it was just the fact that they were seasonal farm workers that kept coming back and forth, and they decided that they wanted to settle out and really stop that consistent coming back for a season and then having to move their family back. So it was really about getting some stability. There's a little bit of both. Okay.
And I just have a general question. How did you get interested in what you're studying, and what was your pathway to becoming a postdoctoral scholar here at MSU?
Well, with regards to this project, Dr. Martinez asked me if I would be interested to work in this project, and that's really how this started. And as I kept working on it and going through all the interviews and analyzing all these conversations, I really started to see that it's important to understand the historical backgrounds and of how these Latinos came to be in the Midwest.
Awesome. And you haven't always been in Michigan, what was your pathway? And so we have young folks on the line that maybe they can see something in your pathway that will help them in their pathway. So what was your career path?
So I'm originally from Southern California, the Los Angeles area, a little bit north of LA proper, as some call it. And I really started my career path in college when I really wanted to get into the social sciences. There was a time I dabbled with like the medical career or writing, just creative writing, but it was really more about the social justice issue that we've been plagued with in this country and just worldwide. And that's really what got me interested in political science, because I wanted to get involved in policy change and political change and all of that. And from there, I ended up applying to PhD programs, and I got accepted to the University of New Mexico, where I was admitted also as a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Health Policy Scholar. And that was really one of the reasons I went to New Mexico, was because I wanted to pursue health policy and health inequities among Latinos. And then from there, I was fortunate enough to get this postdoc here at the Julian Samora Research Institute, which not only focuses on research, but also focuses on community engagement with the Latino community. So that's pretty much a quick summary of my career path.
Awesome. We did have a question from the audience, and they want to know, how important is Cristo Rey Church to the community in Lansing?
So from the interviews, I can say that it was really a place for Latinos to create a community and develop friendships, develop a place to really understand how things worked in Michigan. Currently, I want to say that it's become very important because it's a place where individuals find information, they meet other people, it builds social capital. And that's what I would say is why it's one of this very important place for the community here.
Awesome. And we are almost out of time. If people want to learn more about this study or anything else that affects the Latino community, where can they go for more information?
So I would send them to our institute here at MSU, the Julian Samora Research Institute. I know that I would say the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce might have more information, but those are the two places I can think of right now.
Okay. And one last question. How does the Latino community in Michigan compare to the one in LA?
So from the individuals I met prior to the pandemic hitting and prior to everything being shut down and me going to work, I would say that the individuals I met, there's some similarities in terms of culture, such as the food, and there are farm worker communities in California as well, not too far away from LA. They're not all in Fresno, some are in Bakersfield and so forth, but I would say there's differences when it comes to their experiences in Michigan compared to California and the histories. California, there's a lot of Latinos, but a lot of them come from immigrant backgrounds. There are some that have been established generations in, but from the previous trends, it has been a lot of more immigrant based. In Michigan, you see that as well in certain regions, such as the farm worker areas, but there are Latinos here who have been here for generations, and we saw that in some of the interviews, who were like, oh, well, my father or my grandfather worked in the field. So I would say they're a bit different, but they're not too different.
Awesome. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, and we again encourage people to go to the Julian Samora Institute website. Is that jsri.msu.edu? Is that correct?
I believe so. If not, they can always just Google the Institute and it will pop up.
Awesome. Well, it was great having you here tonight, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Roxanne.
And for the attendees out there, the Science Festival continues through April 30th. So check out our website, sciencefestival.msu.edu, and find something else out there that looks exciting for you to attend. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.